To begin this roundtable, I would like to welcome the chair, Tarun Gulati, ex-vice chairman, HSBC. A round of applause for him. Tarun is backed by an amazing team of experts who are going to be with him today on the stage for the roundtable. Mr. Ramesh Iyer, Vice Chairman and MD, Mahindra Finance. Meera Sondi, MD, Deutsche Bank. Rishikesh Nashikar, Head, Blockchain, NPCI. Ramesh Kaza, Head of Strategy and Transformation, International CIO, EMEA and APAC, State Street. Hitesh Sachdev, Head, Startup Engagement, Innovations and Investments, ICICI Bank. Dr. Shantanu Paul, MD and CEO, Talent Sprint. Ravi Tangirala, Head, Mass Mutual, India. Jitendra Dhaka, co-founder and CEO, Bank Sathi. Sahil Y, Vice President, Agri App Technologies. Yamuna from Leading Change. Ravi Taniru, founder and CEO, ProFinTech. Dr. Karthik Ramesh, Chief Growth Officer, TaskBench, Botswana. Mithun John, Head, Startups, HDFC Bank. Yamuna. And she does what? Leading Change. Request all of you to please be seated. Vivek Naidu, founder, Hot Food Technology Solutions. With that, let me hand over the stage. And we also have co-founder ISF 2023, J.A. Chaudhary Garu, walking up the stage. Tarun. With that, let me hand over the next 1 hour, 30 minutes to Tarun.
Good morning to all of you. I want to thank all luminaries sitting here who have flown from different continents. And all of them are in the deep FinTech area, particularly some solutions they are going to provide. So the reason why we wanted to have the rural FinTech, so a lot of farmers and people who are living in the rural areas, they struggle to get the right kind of finance at the right time. In the process, I mean, they'll end up taking money from all the brokers at a very, very high interest rates. Most of the farmer suicides happens because of the loan burden. They're not able to repay it back and all that. So that's where, I mean, we need some innovative solutions from the technology in FinTech world. In fact, the people are talking now, it is not FinTech, it is a tech fin. Tech is more important, finance is only a means. So I request this panel to come out with strong recommendations so that after 12 months, when you come to ISF 24, what is this panel has done for the farmers? Have they really found out any solutions? The chairman, Tarun, where is Tarun? So you got a great responsibility. You have to tell the next year conference what this roundtable has recommended. Have some of the recommendations have been implemented. Either problems in the rural area for finance have been solved. So go step by step, see that at least we can solve few problems, if not all the problems. So with that, I request Tarunji to take over.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the warm welcome, Mr. Chaudhary. I'm delighted to be here. This is my first time in Bangalore. I know, I understand. Carry on. Thank you. I'm delighted to be in Bangalore and to be hosting this as your chairman. There's an expert panel, so I don't pretend to be an expert. Let me set the scene here. The 60+ percentage of the population in India lives in rural India. And about 87% are sort of in India are FinTech savvy. But that's not the same case in the rural world. They are underbanked, underserved. So what does that mean? They don't get the best of the FinTech world. They don't get the best of technology. And when it comes to the last mile, perhaps the supply chains and other things fall short. There is a lack of, if you will, trust. There's a lack of openness, literacy, and the situation is that sometimes they're also wary of frauds and other things. They don't use the system. So some of those aspects need to be covered tonight. We want to find a solution to make sure that the literacy increases, the coverage of FinTech and the AI solutions reach the last mile. We want to identify some of the issues and then indeed find solutions. So the objective tonight, and this is to come up after this. Tonight I will set out the objectives for the next year. But before that, without further ado, I'd like to request Ramesh Iyer here, who needs no introduction, to give us a keynote. Yeah?
I thought this was a panel. No. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Tarun, and to all the panelists here. And we do a lot of work in rural. I've been personally involved for the last 30 years. And we have customers in 400,000 villages of this country. And we have served something like 7 to 8 million customers over a period, giving them the loan. My understanding of rural first is, they are very knowledgeable. They may not be educated. Let's not get it wrong. They know everything. So we shouldn't start anything there imagining they don't know, and therefore you can get away with whatever you want to do. That's the first thing that all of us should very clearly know. There are various definitions of rural, and I think the way we look at rural, they are very aspirational. They are very adaptable. They are acceptable to any change. They are very agile. Accessibility is a challenge. We are not able to reach there, they are not able to reach you. That's one of the biggest challenges that we find in rural all the time. But what they are also looking for in rural is don't force fit a product that you have elsewhere in the country. Please design a product for them. Because they have those challenges of season vagaries, they have economic downturn happening, and therefore you have to always all time think of what do I design for them and not force fit what you have. That's very, very important when you look at rural as a market. They trust you completely and you will need to trust them as well. And I would also think very strongly that they are not always intentional defaulters, they are circumstantial failures. So therefore it's a partnership model. You can't exercise your legal options all the time. You'll have to partner them, understand them, and then give them the time to be able to come out of where they are. And my last comment would be, you have to be super adaptable. While all solutions that we're trying to find, not to forget that rural is still very cash-driven transaction market. Just to put a perspective, we collect 4,000 crore a month, and even today, about 60% of it we collect in cash. And if I have to give you a little humor to that, when we finance three-wheeler, all of us sit in a three-wheeler and give them a 2 rupee, 5 rupee, 10 rupee coin, and now we have a 20 rupee coin as well. Right? So when they have to repay the installment, which comes to about 2,500 monthly, 50% of that they give you in coin. It's for you to decide that is that an opportunity or is that a challenge. If you accept that as an opportunity, I think the market is too large. And never ever look at rural as a CSR approach. Don't think I have to only go there and do a social obligation. I think it's phenomenally commercially a viable market, provided you understand their need, you are able to design a product of their requirement, and you're able to deliver to the way they are looking for it in the place where they are. Because lastly, don't forget, they will come 40, 50 kilometers to borrow. But you have to travel the same 50 kilometers for the next 36 months to collect. So you must have all the energy. I think that's what we've understood of rural. Thank you, Tarun, for allowing me to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramesh. I think Ramesh talked about trust. Trust is the biggest currency we can have. So the people living in rural, more so now after COVID, there was a reverse cycle where folks moved back to the rural settings. So we need to make sure that we take advantage of the people who are actually there now and make sure they benefit from the products that are out there, the services that are out there, the technologies that's out there. And you mentioned credit. Credit is very critical. The willingness to pay is there. The credit products need to be designed such that take care of this seasonal aspects of the inflow of income that comes to the rural farmer, so that they want to pay, but if the products are not designed appropriately, they can't pay. So moving on very swiftly, I'd like to request Dr. Santanu Paul to give us some words of wisdom.
Sure. As you prefer to say, I think the sit down. Yeah, I thought you might be. Yeah, good. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here amidst such illustrious fellow panelists. Also wonderful to be here. Thank you to the organizers for inviting me, and also Tarun in particular for inviting us here. I can speak from a perspective of somebody who's been involved in FinTech somewhat tangentially, but for whatever reasons of fate, I have been involved in some very large initiatives. So if you look at the rural FinTech today, I think one of the starting points for what I find interesting in India today, and I was talking about that with Mr. Ramesh Iyer a few minutes back in the front row, is that in terms of going digital, India has become a pioneer in the world. If you look at the success of UPI, I'm sure none of us can get by in this room without some UPI transaction happening all the time. And I remember in 2016 when demonetization was announced, UPI used to be 1 million, that's million with an M, per month transactions. And I think we have now reached a point when we are doing, I think Rishikesh will know, but I think at least 2 billion, that's billion with a B, per week. And if the current trends continue in another 18 to 24 months, we should be doing 1 billion with a B per day. So we have reached a point where payments, again, I full respect to the point about the cash economy in rural FinTech, but at least to the extent that digital is beginning to become bigger and bigger, payments is a very solved problem now, not in terms of reach, but in terms of efficiency and effectiveness and cost of delivery. So that, I think, in a sense, we should take pride as a country that we have come to a point where as technology, as mobile phones, as data plans get more and more deeper into the countryside, into the last mile, payments, I think, is an area where we can claim some victory, that this is the foundational building block, all payments, which can get better. And I'm hoping that the next time we have in ISF 24, you will not say 60%, but maybe 40% of your collections has gone to cash, that has become cash. So that is one part of it. The second part of it, which I think is the most interesting part of it, and J. Chaudhary started that in the very first comment he made, and I think it's been picked up by everybody else, Mr. Ramesh Iyer and also Tarun, that credit is the real game now, right? I think people in farmers, rural communities, small traders, businessmen in rural communities, in rural India, they need some workflow support, working capital support, and that has to become some form of ongoing credit. And this is a very different kind of credit than what we're used to in urban and semi-urban locations. There is no CIBIL score very often. There is no way to really know who's credit worthy. So I think the next big innovation in FinTech, in credit, rural credit, will be in being able to use information, data, both circumstantial, weather, locational, health issues, epidemic, all of the informational data about a particular location, the history of a crops. I think we have to get into highly specialized credit It's like there's a saying in that, ultimately you're marketing to one person, what we call marketing, the one customer. Similarly, we have to get into very customized credit capability, and I think that will come through data science and some machine learning support to understand, who is creditworthy, under what circumstances, when and where. And frankly speaking, one size fits all will not work because we can't impose some expensive model which pays for all the failures. For example, the easy way for institutions to manage this is to just increase the interest rate and say, the NPAs are going to be high, so we will just charge everybody a very high rate. But I think we need very custom ability to decide who is more creditworthy under what circumstances. So I think that flexibility, that customization, that one-on-one crediting capability, I think that's going to come in the next big revolution. I think that is not a solved problem. By any means today, if I was a data scientist, I would think a lot about how can I take data, macroeconomic data, regional data, weather data, climate patterns, and then come to some ability to predict what is going to happen in a given location and then build credit around it. So I think that's the big thing. A small additional point, along with that will come insurance, right? We need insurance at that level because even the loans people are taking can be insured. Certainly beyond that, health insurance is a big issue for rural credit. So I think overall, I would say that if we can start looking at credit, looking at insurance as a side part of that, and fundamentally work with data at a macro level to create algorithms which can predict better, I think that's going to be a very big thing. The last comment I'll make on this is that I think there's also room for specialization. I think dairy farmers, poultry farmers, other kinds of specialized farming capabilities, I think can be supported. And I think there are platforms coming now in the country which are creating a marketplace for credit for sectoral, like dairy farmers, poultry farmers, and so forth. So I think that has been another slice of verticalization that will happen, which will also make things easier. I'll stop there. There are lots to say, but I'm sure all of us have things to say that we want to hear from. Thank you.
Thank you, Santanu. That was excellent. Santanu mentioned about basically one size fit all would not work. Try and ensure that you design products that actually fits different type of scenarios. And information will be key. So that was very, very useful. Can I request Dr. Karthik Ramesh to give us some insights, please?
Very good morning. Thank you, Tarun, and very warm welcome to all my fellow panelists and the esteemed audience here. So quick elevator pitch about myself. I'm a little bit of a storyteller. I'll keep it brief. I'm actually an alma mater of the Sri Sathya Sai University. So I learned about fintechs and finance 2 decades back from the alma mater here. So I'm very grateful to be here back as a panelist. And I moved from there to rural fintech, implementing, I would say, financial services solutions across the world, not just in India, but in the remote northwestern parts of Africa. So today, as a chief growth officer of a leading business process management platform called TaskBench in Botswana, we continue to service some of our rural clientele. I also wear the hat of being an IIT IIM alumnus, working closely, especially with the IIT Madras Research Park, where we have the Rural Tech Business Incubator. We call it the RTBI. We have a whole, I would say, host or suite of rural fintech-focused solutions, and I'm going to just borrow some examples from there and personal anecdotes in a very quick manner. So India is probably the only country, I would say, kind of unity in diversity, where you see a farmer, a poor farmer, and if you can visualize this, before he even goes to, let's say, a microfinance institution, he starts his day with a 5,000-year-old mantra. That is the culture of this nation, right? And as Peter Drucker used to say that culture eats strategy for breakfast, so we may bring up the best of best solutions. And in the mid part of my career, around 5 years back, I drove Standard Chartered Bank's global fintech program as the chief innovation evangelist across 80 markets. What I noticed is these solutions, as the earlier speakers had mentioned very beautifully, need to be tailor-made. There's not a one-size-fits-all. And specifically, if you look at it from an agri-tech background, so in the IIT Madras Research Park, we have a framework which is called as RASA, which is Renewable Agriculture Sustainable Architecture, right? Which kind of creates a know-how or a complete, I would say, repository of what are some of the sustainable practices. So it's not just about how financing or microfinancing is going to be provided to the farmers, but it is how this is going to deliver to their end outcomes, right? And I look at this from the prism of, if you can visualize this again, the fundamental culture or values at the apex of a triangle or a pyramid, which surrounds these rural population. the valuation which we are going to deliver through this fintech model, be it through disruptive tech, and having been in Standard Chartered Bank for a long time, we have literally made elephants dance. I've seen that, however, when you implement, for example, some of the latest cutting-edge blockchain or payment solutions, if you don't make it seamless and easy from an end rural customer experience standpoint, the whole experiment is going to fail. I'm going to give you a two-line anecdote. In one of the Middle East countries, in the suburban areas, when we tried to implement a humanoid robot to deliver better, within quotes, financial services to them, the reaction was that when a rural woman walked into the bank, she got completely, I would say, scared looking at the humanoid robot, and she went running out of the bank. Right? So here's an example of bringing a great disruptive channel, but where is the human-centric design aspect in that? Lastly, I will end by giving you another visualization. Imagine a farmer starting his day in the farm. Today, there are platforms which do farmer-to-farmer collaboration. There are disruptive platforms which connect them seamlessly, where they can kind of disintermediate the middlemen. They can actually get things, as yesterday it was discussed on stage, things at wholesale price and sell it at the real retail price. Secondly, we have vault-based systems, not just wallets, but vault-based systems where they can securely transact, store some of the earnings which they have made. There are also interesting companies called, in IIT Madras, called as crop-in, right, to the earlier point I heard, where you use GIS data, you use satellite data. End of the day, bottom line is the farmer doesn't need just innovation. He is the most creative person. He is the person, like we in corporates make rubber meet the road, the farmer makes the seed meet the soil. He sows the seed in the soil. So he is the most creative person. So it is innovation of the solution of fintech meeting with the creativity. And therefore, there's an increasing focus, as the earlier speaker mentioned, on not just financial products, it's an ecosystem of agri-tech, rural tech, fintech, and it cannot be viewed in isolation, is what I would like to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ramesh. You alluded to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs to make sure that the have-nots become haves. So those at the lower end of the pyramid actually go up the chain and actually don't lose out, and the farmers are indeed losing out. So the purpose of this roundtable is to find some of those solutions. Can I request Ramesh to kindly say a few words, please?
You have too many Rameshes here today, right? Ramesh Iyer, Karthik Ramesh, Ramesh Kaza, so it's full of Rameshes on the stage. Thank you for the opportunity being in this esteemed panel. The company I work for has nothing to do with the rural fintech directly. It does actually take care of the assets that are managed by companies, large companies across the world. So for me, I have three things to share with you. First and foremost is, as much the farmers are creative, as Karthik Ramesh has shared with us, they're also quite confused, because the pace at which the technology is evolving, and something that's connecting all of us across the world is this smartphone. All of the farmers have it, but they find it very difficult to choose between what they can trust and how they can actually evaluate what is coming to them and translate into something more meaningful. So if we use ISF and this esteemed panel as a platform for us to be able to come out with simple solutions that can bring awareness to the farmers in the language they can understand. And then we have got multiple startup companies across India that are actually doing great products and service offerings for the farmers at large. If we can bring them to the same platform and also bring this awareness across to them on how they can benefit using a certain product, short term as well as long term. And if there is any kind of certification we can provide to say, you can trust this particular startup to work with you, here is what we have done as a due diligence, I think it makes a huge difference as opportunity for ISF to drive. That's what I see as a real good opportunity for us to make that awareness better. And if we can do that between now and the next 365 days, I think we'll start to see some of the farmers coming and talking in the next session. That's what I see as an opportunity.
That's fantastic. I think awareness, nothing bigger than awareness. And language, literacy, making sure the farmers are made aware of what's available, what may be available, the latest fintechs, the artificial intelligence, the cloud computing aspects that are coming in, they need to be made aware. I think, Jitendra, you could add some flavor because you have about 1.5 million advisors, I believe, through Bank Sati. If you can throw some light as to how you're making farmers aware across the districts, the villages, that'll be useful. Thank you.
Yeah. Hello. Thank you, Tarun, and all the fellow members. So there is a lot of things happening in this fintech side, like everyone is talking about the blockchain, technology, and a lot of other things are there. But like we all know, like almost 87% of population is living in the tier 2 and lower cities. So as per my views, maybe these are my views. So I born and bottom in kind of tier 3, 4, yeah, maybe we can say like very small village of the Rajasthan. So India we can say. But the problem of those people is not the biggest problem of those people is the awareness and the education about financial things. They are keeping their cash for 1 or 2 years in their house, and even they are taking the loans for their basic requirements from some brokers, or some people are there who are providing them loan at 20 or 30% kind of interest rate. So what we can do, and there is a lot of things, lot of products are available in our country. So, more than 10,000 banks, NBFCs, fintechs, and lot of products are there. As Ramesh told, like the accessibility is the problem. So, in Bank Sati, we are solving that level of accessibility. We are building the marketplace for every product categories, like bank accounts is there. So this is again a part of this fintech part. So a lot of people, even as on date, 190 million people don't have bank accounts. And if someone have bank accounts, they are not able to use those accounts efficiently. So we are educating them. And apart from this, the account side, the lending side, even in the investment products also, we are helping them to those like tier 2 and lower cities people through the 1.5 million advisors on every pin code across the country. In last 2 years, we provided them the financial products around the bank accounts and the this lending products. And most important thing, we all know almost 60% of Indian geography don't have the bank branches. So still they require that level of trust. And of course, from the last 2 years, we are solving or trying to solving that level of trust through our agent network on every pin code across the country. So, of course, and definitely there is a literacy, which Tarun told, literacy in the education is the biggest issue. So we are creating a lot of content around this so people can get the awareness, like how they can use bank accounts, how they can open the bank accounts, how they can take loans from the banks, how they can repay, and lot of other things, what are the cons and pros to pay early and the late EMIs of these loans. So these are the lot of parameters where we are working, and definitely as I know the DNA of those people, so they are able to pay, they want to pay, but definitely the education is the gap. So products should be as per them, as per their cycle, or like they are generating cash or earning in every 6 months. So they are not able to, maybe monthly we can't expect the EMIs from them. So definitely there's some products should be there who can providing them the 6 months EMI options. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Jitendra. That's very useful that you got all the pin codes covered. That's tremendous. May I try and shift gear and try and request Rishikesh to add some flavor on what technology, what NPCI is doing, how you're trying to move the needle for the farmers. Thank you.
Sure. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for inviting me here, Tarun and Jay Garu. And it's honor to be part of this esteemed panel here. So I work for NPCI. I'm sure all of you heard about UPI, but very few probably heard about NPCI. NPCI is a National Payments Corporation of India, right? We have essentially built these homegrown payment systems for India, which is sort of redefining the commerce and pulling millions of Indians into formal economy, right? So we are essentially a digital payment enabler. We have built various platforms, card-based platforms like RuPay. Now that you can see RuPay is being one of the preferred payment mechanism for the credit card, debit cards. We have non-card-based systems, which is obviously UPI, NPC, IMPS, and there are a couple of others. Then we have some other systems like bill pay systems. You can pay your electricity bills, all the bills that you do today that happens through sort of a bill pay system. Then NETC is one of the other products where we enable the FASTag, right? So all your car payments, the toll gate payments happen through that. NACH, all the subsidies, the direct benefit transfers that government does today to all the rural farmers directly in their bank account, that happens through our product. So essentially, we are one of the payment layer in the India stack, right? And obviously, you have seen the tremendous growth in the adoption of the payment ecosystem, especially in the UPI case. We have, interesting figures. We have seen almost 650% increase in the payment and UPI penetration in the rural area last year. And that's primarily because of the smart phones and internet penetration that has happened since 2015 onwards. And that has sort of enabled, and Ramesh sir sort of mentioned about the accessibility problem. So that is one of the problem that sort of has been slowly being solved to also tap into the rural population, how they can sort of go towards digitization. And UPI sort of, empowers that vision and, solve some of those problems. So we don't, want to stop at there, right? We are right now, as Shantanu mentioned, we process around 355 million transactions per month. But we are shortly, soon we are aiming for 1 billion transaction per day, right? We are capable to do that right now, and we'll soon achieve that, the kind of momentum we are in right now. And we are building for 10 billion transaction a day, right? So it's not that we have built a platform and now we are done, right? So my role is as a innovation evangelist to also envision how we can build next-gen financial market infrastructure, right, which can support not only payments, but also other assets. What we did for UPI with UPI and solved the payment problem, how we can solve the similar problems which are there across other asset classes, right? Be it a banking, other banking products, insurance, financial securities, and so on and so forth. So essentially, we are really looking at, so if we look at a step back, we are sort of looking at this whole infrastructure with a first principle thinking. When I say first principle thinking is, we have to really see how we can envision an infrastructure which is built for not only for next decade, but next few decades, right? And I'll give you an example. So today, if you look at BFSI, right? It's a banking, financial securities, and insurance. There are three critical ingredients that powers this ecosystem, right? One is the financial institutions, right? So banks, there are brokers, depositories, and insurance companies. So these are financial institutions. The second ingredient is asset. So you issue you asset. Asset is in the form of fixed deposit, insurance policy, or it could be equity stock or fixed income bonds. And the third element is the application, right? So they provide you application to access these different assets. But the problem is these three verticals today operate as a sort of a wall garden, right? When I say wall garden, because you can fairly, do banking with banking app, and you solve, you can basically consume those services through banking app. But can I use these assets and can I do cross-sector transactions seamlessly the way you can do it with the UPI today, instantly, right? Example, can you get insurance on fixed deposit today, right? Can you instantly move your gold in the wallet and lend it on the lending platform and borrow some money against it, right? So we are talking about the things which we are not used to today, but can be possible with the technology, right? So we are really looking at how we can build UPI-like platform or protocol strategy that will sort of unify all this sector, build a horizontal interoperability between these institutions, applications, and assets that will allow you to do seamless movements across assets, application, and financial institutions, which will bring us a lot more sort of agility. It will bring down a lot more cost for an end customer, and you can probably gain a lot of financial advantages with this sort of interoperability. So with that, I think we have, so one of the example of the innovation specifically related to ruler and UPI, and Ramesh sir rightly mentioned, is that while we are building these products, we have to also keep in mind the ruler requirements, right? And that is basically being addressed as we are talking, right? So one of the product that we launch is UPI Lite, right? UPI Lite is essentially a mechanism where you can pay to merchant without even entering a PIN. So you don't need to even connect to your remitter bank, right? It's an instant payment that happens without entering PIN. There is another solution that we recently launched called Credit on UPI. So you can essentially put your credit card on UPI app and use your credit card for buying things. So that is going to be that we think is a game changer, because this will enable rural population to also get instant credit, the micro credit that we talk about, so like a 200 rupees, 500 rupees, depending on their score and their financial history. Eventually that will sort of get built up. The third product that we are launching is also offline product. So the typical problem that you see in the rural area is internet connectivity. So we are launching this offline solution where you can just tap the phones through NFC. You can make payment transfers instantly, right? So these are some of the innovations and product features that we are bringing in to kind of make or empower our rural population to adopt some of the digital payment products and participate in the formal economy. So that's pretty much I want to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rishikesh. It's quite evident much is being done, but much still needs to be done. 300 million transactions, did you say, going up to 1 billion, and the capacity to go up to 10 billion. That sounds great to me. I think very quickly we must try and get a perspective from Deutsche Bank, and we have Mira Sondi here. So can you tell me what Deutsche Bank is trying to do to make lives easier for the rural folks?
I will try.
Please.
Thank you so much, Tarunji. First of all, good morning. I think I can still say that officially. Good morning, and also thank you very much for attending this conference. I do work for Deutsche Bank. I'm a managing director there, heading the technology risk and controls under the CTO organization. But before I talk about what Deutsche Bank is planning to do in this space, I would also like to take a second to explain or almost recognize the platform that we are here for. If I look straight ahead, it says love all, serve all. And that pretty much is what we are trying to do here. We are talking about bringing financial services, products, to all of India. And as we know, majority of India is in the rural sector. So on that note of financial inclusions, I'll talk about Deutsche. Now, Mr. Jay Chaudhary mentioned not FinTech, but TechFin. And I'll try and talk about the tech part of the TechFin. So Deutsche Bank, if you see, it is a 200-year-old bank, institution. But we call ourselves a 200-year-old tech startup. And the reason why the leadership is talking about the bank like that is it is a very much recognized model that, and some of my colleagues here have mentioned that. They've talked about generative models. They've talked about how do I make sure that a rural woman who goes into a local bank doesn't get scared and run away from a human robot trying to serve her. So when I think about those comments, I would like to talk about AI as a model and as a force to be reckoned with in bringing that gap or bridging that gap together. And you would wonder how. If I give you a simple example, India itself, in terms of the number of landlines there are in the rural areas versus number of mobile phones, it tells me that there is capacity. There is a capacity to adopt to the newest technologies much faster than we would have expected. There are more number of mobiles in people's hands in India than there are landlines. So that was a big step up. In the same way, if we look at the adoption of AI solutions, the generative AI and large language models, if you think about it from a technology solutions perspective, will allow us to bring products straight to the rural people. You may say, how? How do I make sure that people who don't understand AI, cloud, and the next thing on the high street in urban areas will still have access to banking solutions in the rural? You must have heard of, or some of you must have heard of, same language subtitling. Now, what that is allowing the world of financial solutions and financial language to become as easy as speaking in their own mother tongue and local languages. If you bring the power of same language subtitling and the power of AI models, or I would say simply creative products in the financial market, I think the accessibility is definitely a thing of the past in the years to come. From a Deutsche Bank perspective, we are two things that we are very keen on. One is increasing our hire by 1,000% in India. And why? Is because both from a talent perspective, AI talent or tech skills are definitely increasing here in India, but also the creativity of what this marketplace actually allows us to do. So on that note, I hope I was able to address those questions around AI. And
Excellent. Some of us who are slightly older will remember that while the smartphones is everybody's pockets, I remember carrying a big Motorola slab of a phone. You remember that brick? And I picked up on the fact that Deutsche Bank is hiring some 1,000 people. I'd expect some of them to be from the rural intake. I hope so. So try and pass that on to folks that are hiring. May Ravi Tanneru please give us some flavor as to what he has heard so far and what can you add from your entity that is largely dealing with a lot of supply chain and other sort of aspects and other solutions.
Sure. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Tarun. Great to be here. And I've been taking some mental notes on all the great things that the panelists and Tarun and Jay Garu have been speaking about. So a bit about myself, from a background perspective, I started my career as a banker and then moved to supply chain financing. I worked for a company which is one of the world's largest supply chain financing company. They do about $100 billion of funding a year. And I would say COVID was one of the big eye-openers for me when I was part of the supply chain financing industry. And I had a chance to go on the field. Of course, all of us read about the problems of credit not reaching the needy people on time. But I had the rare opportunity of going on the field and understanding it from the people on the field in terms of what are the challenges. And I have a lot of anecdotes, but one of the anecdotes I usually share with a few friends is that I met one of a small business owner, and I asked him, sir, where do you get your funding from? And he said, I don't have any traditional bank or NBFC, but I take it from my friends. And I end up paying an interest of almost 6 to 7% per month, which usually ends up around 100% annualized. And I asked him, what do you do? Does your business generate that kind of money to pay 100% per annum kind of interest rate? And he said, I don't know how much I make, but usually at the end of the year, you know, I try and repay the loan by either selling my gold or, you know, dipping into further loan. And this was a kind of a personal awakening for me because I felt that if we don't do anything fundamentally different, then this problem of debt is going to continue forever. So we set up FinTech with that inspiration, where we said that if we have to attack the problem of credit, we cannot just relook at the models. We have to fundamentally change the model. And we picked up that the only way to do it is to be extremely integrated into supply chains. So what we do is we integrate into B2B supply chains, and all of you are aware that not only the last mile, but also the first mile of many supply chains starts from rural India. So the agri-produce which is produced by the farmers is the first mile of the supply chain, and the last mile of the supply chain, which is probably the fertilizers and pesticides, also end up going to the rural communities or the farming communities. So we are present in those first mile and last mile transactions. We pick up a lot of contextual data from these transactions, and we make available funding. One of the most important things we try to solve for is the rate of financing, because that's the fundamental thing which was the reason why we set up our company in the first place. So we are on the difficult path that we have to be the lowest cost option for finance for the borrowers at that point in time. So we are still at an early stage, but I think in many ways we are trying to be in a national mission of solving the fundamental problem in a sustainable way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was fantastic. You alluded to the first mile and the last mile. I remember a quote from Jawaharlal Nehru ji, who said, "We have miles to go before we sleep." So I think there's still some work to be done before we can solve the rural solution. Mithun, I know you're doing a tremendous job in trying to alleviate some of these issues. Can I request you to throw some light from what your bank is doing in trying to make sure the rural folks go up the value chain and they are not left as the sort of at the bottom of the pyramid?
Thanks, Tarun, and it's great to be a part of this gathering here, focused on rural fintech. So I'll base my talk on 3 points that I'd like to highlight. At the cost of being repetitive, point number 1, full credit to what UPI, NPCI, and the India Stack has done in making sure we have a fairly good penetration when it comes to rural India. I think payments now is largely a solved story to the extent we have even started exporting UPI, if I can say that, right? So that's one part of it. Point number 2, what started as a banks versus fintech is quietly clear that it is banks and fintechs will now coexist and work together. So it's not an either-or story. Quite clearly, it is banks and fintechs have to work together to make sure that we deliver the kind of products and services that have to be distributed to rural India. Point number 3, I'm sure all of us have heard of the 3 Indias, that is the developed India, the mid, and the bottom of the pyramid. We see increasing interest in Bharat being a theme now, not just amongst VCs, but even at the funds that we have invested in as LPs, we see increasing interest. And there is a misnomer that, they don't pay and stuff like that. But if they see value, trust me, they do pay. And one of the gentlemen mentioned about having more verticalized startups. So we are seeing more startups coming focused on areas like dairy farmers, giving lending to them. Credit, so when it comes to credit, one major challenge that we see is there's no concept of CIBIL score, when it comes to, unfortunately, when it comes there. But there are companies like, for example, Jai Kisan, that is working on, making a credit mechanism for folks like these, which then enables them to get into supply chain financing. So at HDFC Bank, there's obviously for us, there's a lot of focus in increasing our semi-urban / rural presence. But at the same time, we also engage with a lot of such fintechs to see how we can take our products and services to the last mile. Yeah. Thank you.
That was tremendous. I think the fact that we're now exporting payments and its history is fantastic. And good credit goes to your entity and some of the others that have been focusing on that. And you alluded to Atmanirbhar Bharat, I suppose. So that's a mantra that I think needs to be propagated. Can I request you, Mr. Naidu, to try and give us some insight as to what your firm is doing to work on this space?
Thank you, Tarun, and thank you to the organizers for giving me this opportunity to be on this panel. I'm probably happy to let all of you know that a lot of issues that was raised by the panel are the ones that we seem to have solved either fully or partially. One of the big challenges that's there in lending to 60% of the market are customers who have income but who have no income proof. Rural is one segment. So you can have semi-urban, you can have customers even in urban areas who have income but have no income proof. So the challenge that financial institutions have is how do you assess them? Right? So the method that they used to do was very laborious in terms of meeting them and trying to understand them and underwriting them. And we've used machine learning models to process data and created close to 175 different profiles that financial institutions can actually use to lend. So normally what makes it difficult for these people to approach institutions is it's really cumbersome and very difficult to engage with financial institutions by the time you get your credit. And in the meantime, the opportunity in business has passed by. So we've actually helped institutions give working capital around ₹1 lakh, which used to take a week or 10 days to disburse. Now these institutions meet the customer in the morning, and by the end of the day, the money is credited to the customer's account. We've enabled completely paperless digital journeys for mortgage lending in the affordable housing segment. And one of our use cases is that an Uber driver in Mumbai was able to borrow from a housing finance company, and the journey was completely paperless without him having to go down to the financial institution and put 200 different signatures on the loan documentation. So I think, so that to a large extent is, institutions have started adopting these. And the other thing which, for example, Ramesh has spoke about is customization of the product to the borrower. So today we actually have solutions where if you're a Kirana shop owner and if you wanted working capital, you had to go to the bank. The bank had to give you a limit, and then you've got to somehow manage the limit for your needs. Today we have enabled products where you can get financing at checkout. So most of you would have experienced a situation when you want to buy a mobile phone on Amazon. And when you check out, it asks you, do you want this particular mobile phone to be financed? You say yes, and you're done. We've enabled a similar kind of experience for a Kirana store owner who, for example, buys from Udaan. So today we've brought in the capabilities to tailor-make products. And so one of the other important things that came up was what kind of repayments can you enable? Right? And we've, thanks to NPCI and thanks to UPI, one of the things that we've enabled is the challenge in repayment is these small businesses, traders, rural areas, they have the money, but the challenge is to accumulate the money and give it to you as an EMI at the end of the month. And typically 5 days before that, some other need crops up, right? Somebody's fallen ill, somebody came and asked you for a hand loan, somebody is getting married, and the money that's reserved for the EMI has now gone to some other use and the customer tends to default. So today on our platform, we've enabled the borrower to choose daily repayments, weekly repayments, bi-weekly repayments, monthly repayments, and structured repayments. For example, a tractor purchaser cannot pay you an EMI because the cropping pattern is so distributed, and depending on the cropping pattern, they will pay depending on when they, for example, harvest. What we've done is to bring technology, ML models, to be able to structure these repayments and to do it really quickly, typically within 1 or 2 days for the borrower. And I'm incredibly proud to let you know that in the last 6 years, we've helped financial institutions lend up to 2 lakh crores to this segment.
That is fantastic, and I'm sure Ramesh, you've been listening carefully. Flexibility, which you've been talking about, is being catered to. So that's fantastic. You can sell more tractors.
I'm listening to him from two angles. He's going to be my
Competitor.
as well as enabler.
That is why I sort of woke you up. I said, don't sit still. Yes, things are. Yamna, I believe you talk of change and your entity is trying to make a difference. Can you share some of those insights as to what changes are imminently on the anvil and what's happening next?
Uh, Good morning, everyone. So we started CAB those, that is tax filing for taxi drivers in India in 2017. It was a very niche segment because a lot of contract workforce were coming. But what we need to realize is all of these contract workforce who come today are rural migrant workforce. My bread and butter is in the city, but my heart is in the rural. So that's the segment that we serve. We have processed around 70,000 tax returns in 500 cities across the country. We built a regional tax tech platform. It is not easy. It is a extremely up-savvy, on-ground, but it was a digital-first approach. Until unless, just to give a quick example, tax is a fear factor. If I have a agricultural subsidy that is coming for my land in my village, and if I'm working as a gig workforce in Bangalore, I might lose my agricultural subsidy. I might lose my ration card. So in some years, they even will not have a financial passport like a tax filing, ITR copy, and also they might lose their subsidies also because now the PAN and Aadhaar is being linked. So that was a problem statement that we were solving. We have seen a pattern where a taxi driver or a delivery partner is using his 3 years of his tax return copies to get his value-based housing loan done in his village or take an education loan for his children. So with this experience we merged with Dwara Money, and we built Spark Money, that is a digital bank for urban gig underforce. But what we realized was they were doing remittances for their hometowns or their villages, and the neo-banking experience had to be extended to their rural homes also. One thing that I'm just quickly taking 3 lessons that we have done in the last 8 years of building this FinTech. Now it's the tech, like I would say FinFun. So the rural women households understanding of the access to digital banking and the financial products is a huge miss. I might earn a money as a taxi driver, but I still send my money to the home, back home. So that's a huge gap. Second piece is a center for rural customer resolutions. Today, if I lose something with the deep fake AI, I lose 5,000, 10,000, 15,000. I at least know that I can tweet or I can reach out to a cybercrime. Lots and lots of millions, around 300 million rural people are on ShareChat or on digital platforms, easily accessible or vulnerable for their financial loss. How do they handle or pillar to post? I think I'm just trying to bring 3 problem statements that we can think across, because there's a lot of FinTech. A gig workforce, one of my gig workforce called me a couple of weeks back and he said, his hard-earned savings in a SBI account, was lost in, like almost 25,000 rupees was lost for a cyber crime. And they've been trying to run pillar to post since last 20-25 days, and they don't have a resolution. And all the 5 years of or 3 years of savings is now gone. So what are they going to do there? That's one of the conversations that we are actually trying to see. Is there a possibility we can set up a center for rural customer resolution? And to wrap, I think there's a need for, I have huge respect for the bank Sati team, that what they have done. It's not easy to build on the ground relationship manager kind of a structure, but all the panchayat raj or rural finance learning centers could actually make or break, because we all have systems in place, resources in place, but financial literacy inclusion programs for the new age digital learning centers. Nothing beats Phygital in a country of 1.4 billion population. I'm just wrapping my conversation saying that we all are connected to our roots, and rural is the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Yamuna. That was excellent. You alluded to cyber crime. I sit as a strategic advisor to the Global Cyber Alliance, and I promise you, my WhatsApp was hacked, so I can understand the reluctance to use digital and other means. I can understand what the farmer faces. They say they'll save the best for the last, and so Ravi Tangirala has been waiting patiently. So can I request you to add some flavor, not what Mass Mutual is doing, but what I think you're doing in the rural space and some of the other ventures. That'll be useful for the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Tarun. Probably I have the privilege to say good afternoon, and I know I'm in between you and the lunch. So, first of all, I'm very delighted to be as a member of this panel and a part of ISF, a great initiative. Just to give a little bit of introduction, which is relevant to what I'm going to discuss, is I'm Ravi Tangirala. I head one of the Fortune 500 firms and the Global Capability Center. In Hyderabad, we have established the Global Capability Center very recently in Hyderabad. While we are not directly doing any business on the ground, one of the toughest challenges that we had is around like finding the right talent. And while we are privileged and entitled to hire the best of the best, either in the mid-level or in the experience level or at the entrant level, we realize the commitment and the passion, the zeal is a lot more in the rural side. I myself actually got exposed to the rural talent growing up. So my father was a banker, and every 2 years we used to switch from place to place, and I studied in Telugu medium school. So I got exposed to the raw rural talent, and in my past life I was working with the World Bank, and I got exposed to 172 countries and the talent that is existing, in 90% of the talent in the rural areas. So I wanted to make sure we tap into the rural talent in the FinTech, InsurTech, and especially in the BFSI sector. So 3 things that we have done is, one, we started hiring the talent from rural areas, especially women talent, where we can take the technology and the functional knowledge into these people and essentially educating them in the area, not only from the employment perspective, but also from educating the individual in these areas from the functional perspective, and also taking that to their families, right? So it's you get 2 birds with 1 stone. And we have hired several dozens of these young, talented, committed people from the rural areas, especially from the most remote parts, from the tribal and areas as well. And I was questioned, like, why are you going to that area? So it's all about commitment and what they can bring. And the second thing is around establishing the center of excellences to train these people in their respective areas, and not only provide the education around what's happening in the industry, but also empower them with the technology and prepare them. And the third, of course, Ramesh Kaza is one of the key members in establishing the BFSI consortium, where we bring the industries, the talent from different parts of the region, and the educational institutions together. So which is very powerful. While we are doing wonderful things on the ground, the awareness and education is very important. So we're trying to influence the industries and the governments and the people, and trying to bring them together. And we started the pilot project in Telangana, and we want to make sure this consortium is taken and replicated across other states. So that's what I want to bring, and again, delighted to be a part of this panel, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Ravi. It's fantastic that you're hiring talent from the rural space, and I believe Deutsche Bank should listen very carefully when they hire those 1,000 people. I think we'll spend the next couple of minutes to try and identify 1 or 2 key objectives that set out from this, and I've felt that literacy and dissemination of information might be a key theme. If everybody agrees that for these paucity of time, if there's any burning ideas that you believe we can focus on, one or two, because I want certain objectives to flow out of this conversation and leave the floor open for about 10 minutes for any questions. So, Mithun, would literacy be something, any burning thoughts? Yeah.
Financial literacy, you mean?
No, that's my feeling, but you give us your quick take on what be that one idea that you believe we should pick up from here.
I think in terms of creating infrastructure, which NPCI partly has been doing, and opening up, creating the, having a lot more open source, and as banks, if we can leverage our APIs so that fintechs can build on that to take our products and services to the last mile. I would say, have a lot of collaborative works that banks and fintechs can do.
That's fantastic, Mithun. Ramesh, please.
I'll probably bring it back to where we are today. If we can pick the 50 villages around this university and probably focus on what we can do for them, especially in terms of lending money, improving the awareness around the kind of products we have in the market, bringing banks more closer to them. That probably connects back to this particular program, the ISF as a program. So maybe pick about 50 villages around this and then work on them in the next 1 year.
I know we have spoken offline on this, and that would be a great pilot. Dr. Karthik, any ideas?
So I have an acronym for the action, ACTS, in the spirit of hacking solutions together as panelists. So A, as in, as you said, literacy awareness. One line anecdote, I pick up flowers on a highway from a flower vendor lady who has a very nice looking UPI code on her cart. And when I scan, it says, sorry, payment not accepted. And she's been duped on this for the last 1.5 years, thinking that she's being paid to her bank account. So I'm all with you for literacy and awareness. That calls for action from all of us to increase that awareness. The X being the transformation. We have leaders from various industries, GCCs, banks, fintechs, etc. How does that lead to, if I can say, extension of an alternate source of income for these people? It's not just disruptive technology. And the E is basically, I would say, empowerment, right? So how do we put the power back? It's not just about the fintechs doing well. It's not just about the banks trying to make an impact, but how do we empower, as I heard some concepts about women, farmers, etc. So can we identify the target audience who can be rightly empowered with these tools, technologies, and awareness? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ravi, would you please?
Yeah, I think, one of the things which I would recommend that we can work on is dissemination of information. And I would say that simplicity is the way forward. If we can think of simplifying the information or the financial information that the communities have to provide, the rural communities have to provide to get financing, I think it would address a lot of challenges, because a lot of times people know that they can get funding, but they are challenged in terms of how to present information, what information to give, what documents to give. And I think that would be a real good takeaway for me individually, if we can achieve something around that.
Don't complicate it, keep it simple. Jitendra, what do you say?
Yeah, as per my view, so like all those people from like rural side, so they want to adopt all these products, but they are in fear how they can take, are they able to take these products or not. So definitely I'm always bullish on the that literacy side to create the content and the awareness, like you are eligible, you can take these products, you are able to pay the EMIs. So definitely there are a lot of things we can do on the rural basis. Definitely we are creating that level of agent network, so they are educating in the people on every pin code across the country. So we are doing this, and definitely like in the content side, from last 6 months we created a lot of contents around this, so people can get confidence to get all those products. And definitely again, the confidence is the key for those people. If we can or we are able to create that level of confidence in those people, definitely they will or they can contribute in this financial side of the contribution in GDP also.
Thank you. Building trust and confidence. Santanu, please.
Okay, sure. I think some lovely discussions that happened. I want to connect one or two dots quickly. One, I think Mithun's point about It used to be banks versus fintechs. That has changed banks and fintechs. I would go one level beyond banks and fintechs and NBFCs. Recent RBI guidance on co-lending, I think, is a great way for the whole ecosystem to get on the same side of the table trying to help rural, right? So that's, I think, a great step. One quick shout out to Meera for talking about same language subtitling. The founder of the father of same language subtitling is a guy called Brij Kothari, who's a friend of mine, and he was a former IIM Ahmedabad professor. If literacy and regional language vernacular based, literacy, information, command and control, everything that we can talk about, if you want to get some guidance from him, I'm happy to set up a conference call with him participating because he's been sort of the person who made that whole thing happen. The last point, I think, is the one that I personally care about the most at this point, and I think that goes back to Rishikesh's point, and I guess my long history with NPCI has kind of makes me say that. I think I will make one observation to connect some dots. Number one, we have to ride on what is already working, right? The way to scale is to jump on the bandwagon with something that is scaling. Because mobile phones scale so beautifully in this country, UPI was able to scale so beautifully by riding the mobile phone internet penetration bandwagon. If we have to make rural fintech also scale, I think we have to ride the UPI bandwagon. Now, UPI credit, which he referred to, is a great hook. And if you look at what Vivek said about, the way to kind of automate this process of deciding who's creditworthy and to what extent, if each bank could actually extend targeted credit on UPI to each rural participant in the economy in a manner that is highly customized to that person's need, I think we'll probably be able to solve this problem at scale, riding on UPI credit, not having to worry about distribution except technology-based, but backed up with this whole engine of data analytics and AI and machine learning to support it. So if I was to start a company today, I would say that is the problem worth solving, because then we can reach to rural fintech on the back of UPI and on the back of mobile penetration and not have to recreate a universe for scaling this problem. Thank you.
That is tremendous, Santanu. I'm sure you were listening very carefully, Rishikesh. Ramesh, please.
So two things cross my mind. One is, I think we have to create an ecosystem where the physical player and the digital player come together and create digital solution. Because, we're talking of awareness creation, we're talking of product development and all of that. So how do we create the physical and digital piece come together to be still digital there? I think the other is the credit givers are finding it difficult to do the credit scoring. So can we create a proxy score? Like a CIBIL score we talked about, it's not there, but now we know the segment of customer, their cash flows, their problems, when do they default, all of that is known. Is there a way that all of us collate and create a proxy score which makes lending to this market a little more easier?
It'll make it tremendously easy and the farmers will be smiling a lot more.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Rishikesh, please.
Yeah, I think, New India is certainly aspirational. We are open to new technologies, open to new ideas, and that's why you see we are leapfrogging in pretty much every area, not only digital payments, right? And you see ONDCs coming up. There is a whole new ecosystem that is being created. So I think very important is basically the technology and innovation. I think once you build the technology infrastructure and build innovation on top of it, which is open to the ecosystem, which Mithun alluded, which will create a more inclusive and collaborative digital ecosystems across India, and not only in the payment space, but across different spaces and different areas. And so it's very important that we focus on technology innovation, which is going to help us solve a lot of problems for rural as well.
I'll continue. Thank you very much. I just have two specific points to make, and I think that being one of the two women on this platform, it'll be amiss of me to not say this bit. First and foremost, if I look at India, having been away from India for 20 years, but I was born and brought up here and did my schooling, and I can say that, especially in certain states in India, when you look at rural economy, there are women who are the breadwinners and the earners. And I would like to hope that one of the takeaways we take away from here is to make products and services more customized towards women, encouraging them, empowering them. Some of my colleagues mentioned that, empowering them to talk the language of money and money management. And there goes my segue into the second point. We talked about credit a lot, and that's, of course, a very important point. But when we talk about financial services, I think when financial inclusion is very important. And inclusion means credit, but it also means how we can learn to money manage. And that goes for everybody across the board, and especially women. So thank you.
Meera. Most of the men on this panel need to go back home, so they've taken well note of making sure inclusion of the women is there. Naidu, can you please?
I think just like how UPI from NPCI was a game changer, I think ONDC, which is your Open Network for Digital Commerce, will be the next game changer. And I think it will be critical for all of us are participants, and we'll do our own bit to be able to bring these services to the loop. But there needs to be a much bigger platform on which we can deliver, and I think ONDC will be the one. So around literacy and from policy, if ONDC can go to rural, I think that will be huge for India.
Thank you. Please.
I'll just take one step that what I'm trying to work on probably is we're setting up Flip Clubs, financial literacy inclusion project. Basically, this is leveraging the space of universities and colleges in Tier 3, 4, 5 with the teachers, and also serving the low-income or underserved communities in Tier 3, 4, 5. So that's one of the things. If anyone here interested, please reach out. And also, I think more rural women empowerment and specific financial products like what the panelists mentioned, I think that's a way forward for better financial planning for the country. Thank you.
Fantastic. Ravi, yet again, you have the last word.
Sure. I would like to add a third E, along with education and empowerment, which is evaluate. Looking, thousands of companies here, which have different products and solution. I think one important thing is to see, are we going towards product-centric or client-centric? It's very important for us to understand the need is different for different groups of people. And how do you bucketize the need into different tiers and customize the solution that is required? It may not be one product or one solution. It may be a combination of multiple things. So that's very important for us to understand. So once we evaluate, education and empowerment will become a lot easier. So that's what I see, which has to happen, because you have customers at various levels and various geographical regions and various locations and with different intellectual capabilities. So we need to customize, what is the need and tailor-made the solution for that.
Thank you very much. I hope everybody enjoyed this session and the round table. The experts on this round table were excellent according to me, and I hope you found them as informative and sort of answered most of your questions. But given that we are slowly running out of time and the clock keeps ticking, notwithstanding our best desires, it doesn't move. If there are any burning questions, I would request two questions, sir. And if you can direct them to take the mic there.
You could also, you want to direct it to any of the speakers, you're free to do that, but you're also free to ask questions to the roundtable.
Thank you. My name is Venkat. I'm from Atom State. We are a deep tech guys. I agree with Ramesh Kaja.
Hold it straight.
Yeah. I agree with Ramesh Kaja because someone needs to really work to bring the startups who are creating the technologies and the actual users. Then only things will happen. Most of the problems, right from fraud detection and protection, language translations, omnicell type of translations and colloquial translations, Tinglish, English, all rural languages, and whatever the problems, all the eminent people who are assembled here are already have solutions. There is no doubt about it. Many of startups like us and many of the startups like here, they already have solutions, no doubt about it. Unfortunately or fortunately, these solutions are being picked by Dubai banks, US customers, but not definitely by Indian banking ecosystem. I would like to ask the question because this is the best ever panel I have.
Thank you.
I cannot get any other opportunity to meet such an eminent panel. That's the reason why I would like to ask this particular question. Why the startups are not really encouraged by in specific BFSI? They see only the big techs or solutions they see which are really solving the problems. I'm sorry if I'm straight, but this is the burning question which many startups are having. I'm representing, I think I'm the youngest entrepreneur, but I'm the oldest here. But still, I would like to ask this question by representing all the startups around here. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody like to take up that question? Ramesh, thank you. Let me pass this to you. No, friends.
Thank you. Venkat, let me see if I can give an answer from the Global Capability Center, BFSI industry, because that is where I probably belong to for many, many years now. I would say when the outsourcing happened 30 years back, fast forward, most of the companies started to realize they can establish their own employee base here. That's where the captive started. They renamed it to a global in-house center, and now the fancy name is Global Capability Center. And if I have to be absolutely candid, most of these centers don't have the empowerment to choose the products locally, because these companies are spread into 30, 40 different countries. And if each country is producing ideas, it might become a major challenge for the parent function leader or the application owner to go and see whether that makes sense or not. However, I can tell you in confidence, that shift is already occurring, where most of these multinationals having a presence here for 20 years, 10 years, maybe even last 5 years, they are being empowered to go and look at how do we partner with the startup ecosystem. And I can probably talk for even Ravi Thangirala. He is only here for less than 3 years, and his organization is already looking to have a much stronger partnership in the startup ecosystem, just like the way we are doing with State Street too. So we just started a partnership with T-Hub. We are looking at some of these fintech startups that we can locally partner with and then take the opportunity forward. So I know it's not going to be a very exciting news as of today, but take me for granted. In the next 2 years or so, many of the global capability centers who are establishing end-to-end accountability capabilities and deliverables here and moving more global roles locally here will be able to start that partnership locally. So that's something that you will see as a shift, at least in the global BFSI companies, and that I can probably cover it. Between Meera, Ravi, and myself, we can cover that update for you.
Yeah, I would like to add to what Ramesh said, right? It's partnership can start with mentorship. So that's one thing that we all can look into while our hands are a little tied, to take aggressive steps in this area. So that's one thing that we all encourage, that we are there. There are multiple forums where we can mentor and make sure, all these startups are going in the right track from different perspectives.
So I'll just add one line.
That is why, sorry, Dr. Karthik.
In Standard Chartered Bank for 3 years, I ran the Global FinTech Accelerator Program in India, working in their Global Capability Center. This was between 2017 to 20. It's still live, access.se.com, where any FinTech like you, and today I have moved from corporate to FinTech and health tech myself, so I have 2 of my stalls there. I'm with you. But if you go into these accelerators, it's not just about mentoring. The bank has exposed their entire, through microservices and API layer, their openable, if I can say, retail banking systems, downstream systems, so that fintechs can build value-added products and services on that. So one side, we partnered with the likes of NPCI, but we also could partner with fintechs and allow them to use our firmware, if you will, right? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ramesh. Thank you, Ravi. We have time for just one last question, if there's anybody, please.
Yeah, in the interest of time, we'll just take one last question.
But I'll request those who have not been answered today, please forgive me. Your questions are invaluable. If you can kindly pass them on, we will ensure that the experts on the ground are able to answer those questions. Thank you. Please.
First of all, thank you all so much for spending your time here with us, and it was pretty insightful. Someone who is in infrastructure, so I'm from Chennai, my name is Suyash, and we develop a lot of industrial and residential infrastructure. Specifically, we work with a lot of rural areas because the suburbans is where all the movement is happening. Now, one challenge that we have been facing is that when we do land aggregation, when we collect land, right, when a transaction goes through, it is always, it's always a trouble to put the amount to the person who we are giving. We always have to go through middlemen. And I think when we were discussing credit on one side, that we are not able to give credit, I would like to know this panel's view on how do we make transaction more seamless, because sometimes even a good or substantial amount of transactions don't necessarily happen on UPI. So how do we solve that problem, and how as enterprises we can enable the faster or more seamless transactions to happen? Thank you.
Great question. Who would like to pick that up? Shantanu or?
Great question, thank you. I think my view is that credit and transactions cannot run parallelly, and we have to find a way to integrate both very closely. And we see that across the technology platforms, right? Maybe a decade back or so, we used to carry those cameras or handy cams, but today, except these cameras, we don't have anybody carrying a camera, right? Camera is inbuilt into our mobile phones. Similarly, I think that in many ways, the credit has to go hand in hand or joint at the hip to the transactions happening, because somebody is buying and somebody is selling from somebody, right? If those transactions have to come out and walk into a fintech or to a bank and justify that, I need credit, it may not solve the problem. So we have to find those technologies, data systems, and processes to embed into the transaction flow, the real trade flow, and ensure that the credit is met at the time when these transactions get initiated. Thank you.
I think this has been a tremendous session. I'd like to thank all the experts here who've spared some invaluable time to give us their insights, their inputs, and share their experiences and indeed try and find solutions. We found some objectives which we'll work on, and I thank you for coming here and listening to us. Have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Tarun, and thank you very much to the panel for being so informative, and thanks for giving your time. If you have any further questions, please feel free to write it and hand it over to Tarun or me, and we'll ensure that it reaches the panel. At this moment, can I please request co-founder ISF 2023, Siva Mahesh Tangaturi, to please come up on stage and give a small moment of gratitude to all the eminent speakers of this roundtable. Could I request the volunteer team to please bring up the mementos to the stage? And yes, I do know that we are just about to go for lunch so that you can have good lunch, do some exercise, burn some calories, and clap for them. They definitely did a wonderful job in educating all of us on what's in it for all of us in the rural fintech space. While the mementos are being handed over, can I request Sridhar to please come up on stage for a group picture? Sridhar has been coordinating for this panel, so I would request him to please join for this group picture for the wonderful panel. Request all of the speakers to please gather for a group picture. I will go on this side.
I think this side, the shot of people.
I thank each and everyone personally on this panel for being so informative. With that, I would just give you a heads up on what's in store after lunch for us.
Excellent.
So post-lunch, we have Education 5.0 Roundtable right here at the Premamrutam Hall. Then we have Startup to Scale Up Roundtable at the ISMR, that is Sri Sadguru Sai Indian Medical Research Center, Institute for Medical and Science Research Center. And then we have Innovative Kids / Youth in Business Roundtable at the Gurukulam Hall, powered by Invictus, which is also our sponsors. And that's happening at the Gurukulam Hall. Please be there at the right time and enjoy and understand what's in store for you. With that, we will now break for lunch. Lunch is served for CXOs and speakers at the tent across the admin block. Request all the delegates and exhibitors and the participants to please have lunch by the side of the hall. And let's all reconvene at 1:35 for the roundtable, next set of roundtables. Thank you for being a wonderful audience and have a great day. Remember, ISF is all about connect, collaborate, and celebrate.